This session during Tartan Day, what we're going to look at is the tourism sector, something that Scotland is uniquely positioned with the amazing assets that we have throughout our country. But we're going to look at it from a slightly different angle today. And I'm so delighted to have Kieran, Ian, and Katie with us today. So what we'll do is I'll start by asking each of them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go into a 35-minute discussion about what's happening in Scotland, what's different about the Scottish experience in comparison to other countries around the world. If you have any questions that you would like to pose, either drop them into the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, just drop me a note and I'll pass on the questions to our speakers. But I'd now like to start by going round and asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And I'll go round in the order of Kieran, then Katie, then Ian. So if I could start with you, Kieran, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Russell, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here on this panel today. I think you can see it on the screen. I'm in a very sunny Leith today. I can verify it is very sunny here today. Quickly about me, you probably notice I have a not a traditional Scottish accent. I was born and brought up in London to a Scottish mother and an Irish father. And I always knew that I would come back to Scotland or come to Scotland. And I did for university and then stayed in Edinburgh. I spent 20 years working in hotels in the city centre here. So hotels, hospitality, travel, leisure, tourism is my passion. During the pandemic, things changed up for me a little bit, and hotels is no longer my future. My forever job now, I've switched into travel and tourism. That's what I'm doing now going forward. I know it's a tough time for us in travel, but I'm full of optimism and really know that we've got what it takes and the opportunities there to be successful once things open up again for us in the travel industry. So yeah, I'm really delighted to be here and enjoying the conversation, Russell.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kieran. And I have to say, having assets such as the Edinburgh Festival is such an opportunity for Scotland. And I've always felt it's something that we take for granted when we live in Scotland, whereas for people around the world, such an amazing opportunity to come and visit the city at that time. And we hope to see them here in 2021.
On that one, Russell, sorry, the momentum and the feel around the announcement about the festival this week, it's positively noticeable in the city. So yeah, really excitement is starting to build again about return of our festival.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kieran. And I'd now like to turn to Katie. Whereabout are you based? They're joining us from today.
So similarly to Kieran, I also do not have a Scottish accent. I like to refer to myself as Scotadian, Scottish, Canadian, a mixture of both. And I'm also in sunny Leith. So it's the place to be, I'm just saying. So I am part of the business events team with Visit Scotland. So my primary role is to promote Scotland as a place to bring conferences and corporate events as well as incentives, but then really connect those industries into the existing industries in Scotland. So making sure that when they're leaving their meeting, they're doing something more than just going to a pretty place or pretty castle, because Scotland has so many untapped resources that I'm really passionate about.
And you'll have the world visiting this year as well in November, Katie.
Very excited about COP, just getting in there now. So really looking forward to that one.
I attended a briefing about the UN summit in Glasgow earlier this week, and it was a list of Hollywood stars who we all hoped were going to come. So it was showing the fact that it was a real dynamism to bring people here, and I look forward to welcoming everyone to Scotland. So thank you for joining us today, Katie. And now, a Scottish accent, Ian?
Yeah, hopefully not too strong a Scottish accent. And I did spend a bit of time in London for 10 years, so I think it got probably softened off a little bit through the sort of travelling down there. So I work at Whereverly. We create cultural and tourism apps and websites. So Some of the kind of bigger ones are like Scotland Starts Here, the North Coast 500, Stirling, Falkirk, and a few other ones we're working on just now. So we kind of take all this amazing Scottish cultural content. So we work with, you know, storytellers, musicians, guides, all sorts of people with amazing cultural knowledge, and we kind of bring it into a digital platform that we make accessible to visitors. It used to be a lot of visitors from, you know, America, from North America, from Canada, Australia. Now, I think over the last year, it's been quite homegrown audience. So a lot of people using it for finding nature and amazing things to do around about them. So yeah, no, it's really nice to be here and with everyone. So.
I have to thank you for joining us, Ian, and I have to do a pitch for Ian's work. It is quite simply extraordinary. Ian has managed to use technology to deliver the richest possible cultural experience. So, you know, if you're driving up the main highway from Perth to Inverness, or if you're on the famous 500 road in the north, or visiting some of the cities, the ability to have in your pocket, on your phone, this wealth of cultural experiences. And I can remember that I was involved at the very start, and I can remember listening to you saying, "Oh yes, Russell, we've just had primary school children record a singing of Cooter's Candy," which I sent to my mother, and it was just extraordinary. But to have that on your phone, so you get this depth of cultural experiences, is quite extraordinary.
And it's been a total pleasure. I do remember that when we had to, you know, pitch the idea to 100 school children, and, you know, like the teacher was saying, there's this app coming along, you can be part of it, you can sing the songs. And there was almost a vote at the end, and I saw a lot of the kids were into it, but the ones at the back, the older ones, I was like, they're pulling away. But they all did it, and they all sang beautifully. So it was a really good experience. But I think we're just so lucky. There's been so, you know, much effort and amazing people in the cultural scene. So you've got the Scottish Storytelling Network. So we're just hooking into all this amazing stuff that's there and kind of surfacing it. So I think we've just been dead lucky to be in Scotland with all these, you know, amazing people that have been doing it for their lifetimes. So
it wasn't till I met Ian that I appreciated the fact that Scotland has professional storytellers who work out of the Storytelling Museum near Edinburgh Castle. And it's just incredible to listen to those stories, and it just takes you straight back. For me, it takes me back to my childhood. Thank you, Ian. So if we think about the different types of visitor experience we're discussing here, so Kieran, if I could start with you. So you're working, I presume, more with the vacation person coming to Scotland. So what is that rich message that you feel people from around the world are grabbed by, that wants to make them come to Scotland, particularly for that first visit?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I'm going to base it from an Edinburgh viewpoint and perspective. Yep. As that's where I've lived for most of my life now. And it's interesting, I take out little things that you guys have said already. So Ian talking about that blend of storytelling that give Scotland that window to the world, so cultural experiences, and the blend of how that works. But also going to what Katie said about the business travel and the events and the tourism. If I go back to my motivation for moving into travel, I was quite fortunate, and I got a kind of global discovery through business with a little bit of leisure added on, and that's where my education started with regards to travel. And why not start that at home? So business will bring in the lot of travel, and it will start to awaken people to what's available in cities and kind of rural locations. I think if you look at Edinburgh right now, I'm in Edinburgh quite a lot. So I cycle or walk and I run around the city, and that appreciation for what's actually happening in a quiet city right now is still quite stunning. I cycled from somewhere yesterday, one of Edinburgh's hills, Seven Hills, the Braids. So I cycled down from the Braids all the way back to Leith. And I don't think there was a moment where I didn't just look around me and could see something, whether it be a monument, whether it be hills, whether it be the sea, and everything was blue. It was great yesterday. Everything was blue. And the buildings, and the new buildings on top of the old buildings, what's happening with development in the city. So we've got a lot of eyes on us in Edinburgh and Glasgow, COP mentioned already, and other stuff coming in. So for us in the city, we just need to really develop a blend across what we've got and just showcase that to the world, because it's all there and the people have the passion and we're all coming back, and the cities and the rural areas are all reawakening with really, really great assets, as I think we've all mentioned so far in this conversation.
I think you're absolutely correct. Last year in 2020, due to lockdown constraints, a large proportion of the British population holidayed at home, not leaving the islands. And the feedback I got from people who came to Scotland for the first time was, oh my God, the food was fantastic. The level of hospitality and service was off the scale. That wasn't what I was expecting. And people visiting the Western Isles or visiting Dumfries had that kind of different experience as well. And when you mention Edinburgh, it's to me, it's the parts of Edinburgh you don't expect. So for me, my favourite place in Edinburgh is in one of the gardens of Queen Street. It's just at the top of the new town. So in that garden, there's a small pond, if you like. But that's the pond where Robert Louis Stevenson played with pirates, the man who went on to write Treasure Island. And it's that magical narrative. And 100 yards along the road is the monument to the author of Sherlock Holmes, to Arthur Conan Doyle. And I just don't think you get this anywhere else in the world. And you get the same in Glasgow and Aberdeen and Inverness, this amazing cultural heritage.
Can I just give a massive, on that one, a little plug for Leith. So I was getting a little bit of Zoom anxiety today. I think I've been on quite a lot of calls today, and I just needed some time out. So I went across to Leith Links, which is a large expanse of grass very close to where I live, and the history on there. And I sat in a coffee croft, so basically a croft essentially with modern day city farming type stuff, and had my coffee in there, which was lovely. And I just took some time out and I chatted to people that were on the croft, that were doing the kind of vegetables and stuff. And it was just really wholesome, really experiential. And I was talking to the owner about how you really can market that authenticity and what's happening around the experiences. They're not setting up markets just to sell, it's to learn, it's to educate, all this kind of stuff like that. But then coming back across the links, you forget there's this brand new little kind of statue monument put in for the original rules for golf. And you just come back and you just got this like the history there as well. So yeah, absolutely echo what you've said, and just chucked in my favourite place in Edinburgh too.
That's brilliant, and also home to the best football team in the world. Though the results don't prove that, but we'll just live with it. But if I could turn to you now, Katie, we talked about that the visitor coming from overseas as a tourist to have that tourist experience. But you live in this really interesting world about the business visitor. So people deciding that this is the location to hold their event. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you see happening there and why people make this decision to use Scotland.
Well, I think in the future, it's going to change greatly in terms of international travel coming into Scotland. Whereas previously, I think pre-COVID, a lot of it was interest in heritage, and Scotland is seen as such a magical place, and there's bagpipes and there's whiskey. But I know everybody knows about castles, everybody knows about our whiskey and our bagpipes and our heritage. And I think now, post-COVID, it's going to have to be something more. And I think that's where it's going to have to be knowledge communities are being formed, exchanging of ideas with actually the local government here or with the innovation centers or the universities here, because the universities are really open to working with sectors and with incentives coming in, making sure that they're connecting the right people. So it's not just about going to have a meeting, it's about going to the right place with the right meeting and the right sector. So if it's going to be technology in fintech, Edinburgh has a very strong fintech community. So making sure we're making those connections, because I believe, and we believe that meetings now mean more. So it's not about flying over, it's about making sure you're leaving the community better than you took it, that Visit Scotland, we're able to connect you with, say, your CSR policies, so that if you have a carbon offset, we can say, okay, here's Trees for Life, who you can have trees planted that offset your carbon. But I think it's that type of movement where it's more than just a meeting. And that's, I think, where Scotland is, especially with business events and with us, it's totally different than anything else that any other country is currently doing post-COVID.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think we have this unique cultural norm in Scotland, which is about collaboration. So if I was putting on a conference in a big city, it would almost be in isolation. The conference happens in the big city, the people come and go. But in Scotland, there seems to be much more, well, if you're doing a conference about this particular subject, we must introduce you to someone from Strathclyde University or someone from an innovation centre or someone from here. So we almost feel compelled to bring people who are subject matter experts into this.
Mm-hmm. I think it's what Scotland's really good at is connecting and connecting people who will help the other person. I think it's just in the Scottish nature.
Yeah.
And also subsequently, I believe, and I think it's because I half Canadian, half Scottish. There's so much to be said of Scottish innovation and Scottish connections that has already been made, that the Scots are just like, oh yeah, well, we launched the second most satellites into space outside of California. We produce the second most satellites out of, like, and that to me boggles my mind why we're not like shouting about that and being really excited about that, because I think it's very like, just, we like to be calm about big accomplishments like that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Katie. Now, if I turn to Ian now, so one of the big successes for Scotland commercially a few years ago was when we saw what we call a unicorn exit. So a company that was sold for more than $1 billion. And that company was Skyscanner, the travel booking technology company. Now, that left, what I noticed around the world with investors was they looked on Scotland and said, well, is there a travel tech hub there? Mm-hmm. And that's something that we've seen develop, and you're part of that that sector, Ian. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this travel technology in Scotland and how you see Whereverly fitting into that, and also the collaboration, because I know you've done a lot of that.
It was quite funny. We were actually with Gareth gave a talk to us at our little accelerator when he'd sold his company. So the day the news came out about the big sale, he came in and sort of gave us a fireside chat in his hoodie. And if that is the way you come across, he was very relaxed. He was excited about it. It was an incredibly big deal. The team were excited. That they'd achieved so much. I think that has spurned, it's shown people, what can be done. A lot of people will be going through and learning a lot of the skills through the system and setting up their own companies. It created wealth that's getting invested in a lot of companies. Some are out, some are, I think, getting developed just now. I think the points that have been made about the big connections between, universities, that kind of travel tech hub that's been formed in Edinburgh, we've benefited from. We're working with two projects, one with Data Lab, one with Edinburgh University in terms of sort of AI and data processing. So it's kind of, I think it's been that was like the flagship event, but I think that having the community and the connections all been made up and solid ones that are there for years, I think will just grow and grow. And there's already quite a few, obviously quite exciting companies coming through.
And your company, Whereverly, it wasn't just a startup. You actually were involved in one of Scotland's unique public sector incubators with CivTech.
Yeah, we're really lucky. So we kind of set up. We weren't quite sure what we'd been in a company before. It went to a bigger company and all that. So we kind of done that. But we wanted something new, something exciting. And I think one of my friends kind of spotted CivTech and said, there's this really interesting thing coming along. We had a look at it, and it was just about solving challenges, making the world a little bit better. So it wasn't trying to take over the world or, exploit markets and all that. It was about just making things better. And the challenge, we'd worked on, the Fringe sort of app website. We had a lot of experience in the areas of the festival sector, which is a massive industry and a great thing in Edinburgh. So I think from that experience, we thought, there's a travel challenge about taking people off the beaten track. And at the time, we thought, well, we didn't really have a plan. At the time, we just thought that'd be really interesting to just look at that afresh and just see what could happen. And yeah, it's just grown and grown since then. It's been, I think tourism is such a strength for Scotland. So just like it can be strong in fintech, I think tourism is where we're really strong. There's so many amazing people across the industries, and it's. I think that idea of collaboration. It was quite funny. One of my last trips in Edinburgh about a year ago, and just talking Kieran and Katie about the awesomeness of Edinburgh. I remember walking along a different route, and I saw this building with lighthouses all over it, and I was like, that's an amazing building. What is it? And it's like, and I never heard of it before, the Northern Lighthouse Board building. And it's obviously had amazing lighthouses across Scotland, and it's got this amazing building. We were working on a marine project on the island project out in the west coast, and we were thinking we need to get lighthouses. I was like, did I not see a building? Yeah, I did see a building. So we phoned them up. The people were awesome. They had all this amazing pictures, beautiful pictures of the most beautiful lighthouses. There's no such thing as a bad lighthouse. So they gave us all this amazing data and pictures and information. And I think that's the nice thing. That's why I think tourism and technology in Scotland just work well together. We've got quite a rich, supportive ecosystem around it.
I think it's going to be a huge success for Scotland because of that linked together with the natural assets as well. And just to ask you, you mentioned the data lab. So do you want to talk a little bit about, so the data lab being an innovation centre in Scotland, looking at the use of data in all its formats. So how important is data to the technology company you have?
I think it'll be foundational. So I think it's one of the things that in tourism can be missing. So I think to have the data lab, which are the most approachable, relaxed people who can talk to a programmer in programmer language about, machine learning and AI in a practical sense, but also do things that involve like millions of pictures of body parts to actually work out differences. So the same people that are solving these incredibly technical big projects, to actually be able to talk to people who work in the kind of programmatic side is a huge asset. So I think they are, they're obviously working on multiple projects, but I think, across the UK, they stand out as an exceptional kind of catapult enterprise, if that's what you would call them. So, and they're really nice and folk to deal with.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Ian. And I really feel we're getting across this message of collaboration across all the different areas within Scotland, which is a key asset that we have. So I'll return to you, Kieran, and you've had a career within the hospitality sector. You're now looking more at travel and tourism. So where do you see our world going from a Scottish perspective? Do we return to the experience of 2019, or do you think it's going to be different going forward?
Yeah, I can only, obviously, my opinions on that one probably differ from many's, I guess, but the future. That's a good question. For me,
just what you believe, or because we've all got our own opinions.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering how topical to go. I think from regards to, there was some really great work getting done in the tourism sector. I think, and I think this is where the two taglines from you, Ian, and Katie resonate really importantly. Like, I think wherever leads, yours is making journeys memorable. So that's journeys. So that's around Scotland. That's not just central spots and hubs, etc. That's getting out and about and going global or Scottish discovery of areas that you haven't seen before. So that has to remain key, and that ties in with the educational and the learning and the self-discovery piece that I really believe in as a travel advisor going forward. And then at the flip side of that, the bit that is really important to me and has to happen, and I believe will happen, is Visit Scotland. Your current thing is yours to enjoy responsibly. So in terms of that responsible travel, making the right choices, and having a sustainable holiday, business trip, whatever it may be. To time all those together, and then in with my tagline for my future is creating exceptional travel experiences. So I think I touched on it before with my little Croft example, that real rich learning element of what we can do and do in Scotland really well. We don't just need to tell people what we're doing, we can really educate people and give people that real rich sense of cultural learning around what we do have to offer here. I think we've been touched about throughout the week, the amount of times people have talked about storytelling and culture and history and what Scotland's done in the past. It's what can we do? What can we do in the future? And I absolutely tech and the data that we've got and we're developing with Josh and Leslie and everybody else in the data tech centre and hubs, alongside the relationships, the collaboration and the village feel of the country. Yeah. We're in a really good place. And the numbers, the visitors will come back. I think North American visitors to Scotland would have been, what, 25% perhaps, quite high numbers of that, something like that, I think, or it used to be anyway. And I would imagine that will come back because that passion, desire and drive to see our natural assets alongside what the people are doing and from the heart is strong. So in summary, as long as we get back to tourism, that the good people are still around, that we're creating really great hospitable moments and really focusing what the people can deliver, accentuate that with all the technology and the data to grow and develop, and do it all in a responsible and sustainable manner. It's going to be a good time, full of opportunity for Scotland across the world.
And I love the fact you said in there the sustainable part, because that's now at the core of what we're doing, within a country so committed to the climate emergency. So if I could just ask you something, because over the last year, it's obviously been tremendously hard, particularly for the tourism and hospitality sector. But there's something I've noticed is that if we think about digital as a way to market and explain services and experience, I feel that everyone's up their game in Scotland. Everyone's website's better. It's more creative. The social media is better. The idea of using products such as Zoom to actually explain the experience as well. Have you seen that happening?
Yeah, I have from where I am. I think because I'm looking at this experience piece, and to get a real authentic experience across on a digital platform, as you do at Reveille and lots of other applications, is a real skill. I think one of my favourite, I think he's been on a couple of talks maybe this week, Aeneas with his whiskey experiences. I've been on one of those, and it was amazing. And there were people from all around the world joined that to drink whiskey and stories and just have conversation. It was fantastic. So yeah, you're absolutely right. People need to up the game. They have, and I believe the good people that are doing all the good stuff right now are going to come out of this global pandemic, in a stronger position, doing better stuff and be better for it. So,
yeah. And I saw a brilliant example of that. Was I spoke to, and you could only say this in Scotland, I spoke to a clan chieftain, and she said that when we'd gone into, she's one of the few female clan chieftains, and she said that when we'd gone into lockdown, she knew nothing about digital. And the way she'd upskilled over the last 12 months was quite remarkable, to really understanding how digital could be used to pull together the clan globally and also to share information about the assets in Scotland. So I think that's been a real mover for Scotland.
Yeah, well, big shout out to Visit Scotland on that, because they did some really good work in terms of the digital marketing. I attended a couple as well. I've had corporate backing in the past, whereas now I'm on my own, so that was really good. And like Codebase, CodeClan, there's so many organisations out there that just want to help, want to support, and we keep coming back to that connectivity and collaboration piece. It's rife and really strong and valued.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Kieran. So with all that praise, Katie, we should turn to you now. So we're hearing a lot about, how business events are going to go forward. I spoke to someone in Melbourne this morning, and we were talking about how, they're having discussions about Australia really being close to external visitors, maybe 2023, maybe even still restrictions in 2024. Now, Well, we're also hearing about blended events, which in some way we'll be physically there, but we'll also be digitally involved. And to me, this is exciting because this whole new market's developing. But the one thing that is unique is these assets that's within Scotland. And I just wondered how you saw that business gathering market changing as we move forward.
I think we can break it down into specific kind of organizations. If it's a multinational organization, I think having hubs all around the world is great. I've been part of a couple of conferences that have had a hub in Singapore at the same time as UK, at the same time in Austin. So that is really interesting because I think a lot of these companies can then have everyone together in one place. But I think what we're really missing out there, and I think it has been noted, is that kind of, although I love virtual and I think it's a great thing to do in the meantime, it's hard to collaborate and to really spark that discussion that could bring the next big thing when you're in a screen.
Yeah.
And I think for now, it's not going to go back to, okay, everybody flying to one destination immediately. It's going to have to be a phased return. And I think that's just being smart about it, is to really plan for virtual is around. And I think there's a lot of great benefits because now you could get speakers that potentially couldn't be your speaker before because they wouldn't be able to travel time. Now you can have a lot of AI working in with your programs. But I think, again, it's the whole collaboration key that is going to be the driving force, I think, in the communities, which is going to be, it's difficult to get it on virtual platforms.
And I think there's such a pent-up demand. I see it within the business community of people wanting to physically gather together again and to get those kind of, it was interesting. There was a statistic came out that January was the largest ever financial number for venture capital investment. So we're seeing a lot of industry activity, but actually wanting to bring people together is really important. And I think because Scotland's got venues with size and scale, which kind of but also with a low population in the country, that kind of addresses some of people's concerns. Do you hear that in some of your conversations?
I think I do, especially when you're looking at, say, a market in London, who traditionally companies would not look at Scotland because it would be considered UK, and they'd want to go to Madrid or they'd want to go to Prague. But now Scotland is on the table because we are seen as being safer. We have more space. There are the same venues. We have all venues for all different sizes. And especially since there is quite a spread geographically, there's a lot more confidence in people saying, okay, well, perhaps in January we can go up there because there's a lot more space for us to go. And it is the same level of service as I would expect in London.
That's really good to hear. That's I just like the idea. I'd have to tell you, something's happened for me personally in the last year, which has never happened before. So since I was about 16, I've always been asked the same question every day. Someone I've met has asked me this question, and I've never been asked this question in the last 12 months. And the question is, how tall are you? Because we're all the same. I'm 6'5", but now we're all the same height. Hey. So it's quite strange for me. I'm going to meet people I haven't met before. They're going to go, oh, I didn't expect that. So if I could turn to you, Ian, to have I think it'd be good to hear a little bit about how you see the technologies that you're seeing getting developed in Scotland and travel technology, how you see that getting distributed globally or having an application globally. Like if you think about Whereverly, are the applications you're developing only really relevant in Scotland, or do they have global relevance? And then the other ones you're seeing?
Well, I think it's quite an exciting time just now, because I think we're seeing a lot of almost reimagining. So there was going to be a big, massive event in one day with lots of visitors. It can't happen now. They're going to have like amazing stuff like, 20-foot puppets and things crawling out of the water and loads of amazing opera singers. It will be mind-blowingly good, but it's going to happen in one day. So what they're thinking of doing is stretching it over a month. and actually using digital in places and having routes. So you've got, ER experiences and stuff along the route. So they're going to get the same amount of people, but over a month, so it's not so congested in places. So I think, that's there for a purpose for that one day. But I think that kind of idea of, enriching, making memorable journeys, but maybe looking at younger audiences and how we can engage with them. And I think that'll have, practicality across, the whole of Scotland, the cities, the towns. So I think that's really exciting, and just be working on that just now. I think some of the other really cool stuff is like collecting things, like going to different islands, getting off the beaten track, and that whole kind of collecting, gamification, badge collecting, like stamping, I think is really exciting. I thought it was kind of new, and I spoke to somebody who worked on pilgrim trails just a couple of days ago, and apparently in like 1100 you go to Spain, and you used to get what was it called? It was Credentiali. It was like this little book, and you would go to different places and you get different stamps, and you get special deals at the hotels or the places to stay, and special food. And this is like 1200, and I'm like, oh my god, it's gamification and that's offers, but it's happening like about 1,000 years ago, which blew my mind. So I think things like that, so they get things that just obviously travel through the ages. I think for us, we're looking at stuff that we've really loved working on in the last year. So we've kind of leaned into nature, so we get into the kind of 3D maps and where the animals live and the seal haul outs and stuff like that. So we're thinking in places that have got, awesome nature and places to stay and things to do. So we've been thinking about, North America is a good place. They've got some incredible nature experiences and routes and trails. So we're quite busy just now, but we've kind of got almost a little eye to the far off lands across the sea. So.
You paint such a vivid picture, Ian. You're fantastic at this. And I was thinking about my experience with American members of Scottish Business Network, and when they talk about Scotland and they talk about the tourism side, they say, well, the effect of Scotland on America, and John Muir.
Yeah.
And John Muir's story is seen as such an example of how America was changed at a critical moment, which they're now generating the benefits from all this, from the amazing parks that have been created across the continent. So a strong link again there with Scotland. But we're just coming to the end now, and I would ask questions, but all we've done is trigger off a debate from people in Leith and people in Edinburgh. So thank you for that, Kieran. But I'd just like to end just with each of you. If you imagine we've got all these international guests watching this particular episode, and what was your message to them, or your particular ask to them from your area of where you're focusing? So, Kieran, perhaps if I could start with you, is there something you would like to say to this audience?
Yeah, I think so. I think as I start off in a slightly different career in travel and experiences, the message is when safe and everything's come back, come visit, come experience, and just really try live and explore as a local. I think that the only way you can really get the true intrinsic kind of value of a destination is by living it as a local would. And when I travel, that's exactly what I do. So just find someone, the most trusting person you can find. There's lots of us here, and just really find out what they would be doing, and just follow that path. And for me, that's the way you're going to discover the magic and the best stuff that any destination is going to offer.
And if anyone's looking for advice about coming to Scotland, would they be okay to contact yourself? That
would be most welcome. Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Kieran. And good luck in Leith. And over to Leith at another part is Katie. So Katie, to anyone watching who's considering where should they host their event, what's your message to them?
Well, I think that obviously biased about Scotland. I don't think there's anybody who has the connections inter-Scotland that we have. But I'd say if anybody was ever thinking of having a meeting here or even sending an incentive or something, just get in touch, because there's so many aspects that we can link so many sectors back and really create connections, because that's what I'm really passionate about, is making sure that it's worth something to come here, and it's worth the connections that will last after they come here. And I think that's super an important piece, to be like a global key player in big change.
Wonderful. So anyone looking to hold a business conference anywhere in the world, I would suggest speaking to Katie first to get impartial advice. There we go.
Totally impartial, 100%, Scotland all the way. Yep.
And if I could turn to you, Ian, finally. I've got a specific question for you, Ian. So what we're seeing is a lot of interest in ancestry vacations. So individuals who've got family links with Scotland, who are part of the reason for coming is because they would like to see some link they have with the past. And I wondered if you thought that was something you're seeing in technology as something linking. The reason it triggered my thought was we did an event into Salt Lake City recently. I think Ancestry.com is based there. And we talked about one of their incredible services is to do a DNA analysis to provide a graph to show where your forebears are likely to have come from. And I just wondered if you're seeing that as a technology developing in that kind of ancestry part, and really any other point you'd like to close with.
Yeah, I think, like we've all done at our place, the sort of DNA testing, it's amazing. So I think for everyone to know, to discover relatives is great fun. So obviously there's other stuff that can come with it. So read the health warnings and the health tests and stuff of what that might change your life, and the wee boxes that are all locked inside each other. So be careful with it too. But it's like one of those double-sided things. But I think, I think you'll see it. We'll hear stories with there's people visiting, maybe not the high-tech places, and this is maybe where some of the data is, but going to the local libraries, like the local libraries in Stirling's a popular place to go because they've got documents going back thousands of years, and they'll help you, trace and help you sort of build your family tree and discover places. So I think there's rich data sets in Scotland that probably could, if they became digitized, could kind of come closer to make those connections. Where do people live and work? What would it have been like to have been working down a coal mine? If that was your ancestor worked in the coal mines down there, getting that experience. So I think there's something powerful and rich to it. And I think it's something as technology comes on, both in the public sector side, digitizing lots of stuff, and the DNA side, you can get some really memorable trips, like your real, your ancestry trip, and see what the farm was like and what it was like to pull a plough, for your ancestors. So I think it could be super cool, that space.
Well, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing our diaspora within Scottish Business Network, a real interest in this. So people telling me, I'm 7% Scottish, Russell, and my ancestors came from Greenock. What's Greenock like? Well, we'd like to come and see that. Real interest.
Yeah, I think it's always been a theme, a powerful, in the work we've done, the places we've been, the people we've met on the trains visiting. So we'll talk to the tourists, from when we started a few years ago, and it has been a powerful driver, So, but I think technology can maybe make it a little bit more accessible and easy, and that's what technology sometimes does good. I think people, I'm going to go have my holidays in the Scottish Islands, just because I've spent, several months looking at amazing maps of the Scottish Islands and where the birds and animals live, and the beaches, the lighthouses. And so I think that as Kieran, as Katie will say, get off the beaten track. And there's so much more, so much to Scotland all over. And I think that just get out there and go off the beaten track. So maybe spend a little bit more time, maybe come when things are quiet, even consider months you wouldn't maybe considered before. But I think that would be brilliant if people could do that.
Wonderful. We'll have to. I think we'll have to frame you, Ian, and perhaps there's a space to put Ian on the Visit Scotland site. Just as with these stories, it's amazing. Well, can I thank you all, Kieran, Ian and Katie, for spending some time with us today. I think these are incredibly valuable messages for everyone who's interested in this sector or considering Scotland from a business location or from a vacation experience. So thank you all very much. Thank you now. Take care.